everyone, welcome to the British Ambassador's residence and the British Embassy. I am not your host tonight, technically, BEBA is, but I am very, very fortunate and honoured to have a chance to say hello and welcome to this home. And I hope you see it as a home and that you feel comfortable here and that you've had a wonderful iftar and a chance to catch up with friends. Ramadan, for me, is a time of fasting, of course, but also of giving, volunteering, reflecting, a little bit of humility, community, and above all, family. And so perhaps it seems a little strange to have an iftar where the central theme is business and doing business, rather than these themes which are much more close to home and close to family. But I'm going to make a proposition to you, ladies and gentlemen, and that is this, that BEBA is a family. It is a very large family. More than 800 people are members, and organizations are members of this family. And not always does the family get along. When you have that many brothers and sisters, you can be forgiven to having a few family arguments. But basically what it is a family. It's a very closely knit group of organizations and companies and individuals who care about Britain and Egypt and how we succeed together. So let's call this the family firm, not with a mafia connotation, but with a warm and positive business connotation. And I'm going to say that we need this family more than we've ever needed it before. Not because of how things are going. Things are going fine. Britain and Egypt have a really strong trading relationship. And for the UK, Egypt is right up there at the top of our markets in MENA and Africa, and is our fastest growing market by a long way in Africa. And therefore, on the face of it, business is good, things are good, and we're doing really well. There are two buts, however. The obvious one is the threats. We have threats in terms of the shocks we see, not just from COVID, but now from the Ukraine crisis. So that is a real drag on trade and on the economy. But also we have a massive challenge, which Egypt has taken on the leadership role of, and that, of course, is COP, and the climate conference in November. And we in the UK had the privilege of hosting that climate conference last year in Glasgow, my hometown, and it was the hardest, most difficult, most challenging summit we ever managed in our whole modern history. And as Egypt takes this forward, it is an extraordinary challenge, even if it is an opportunity to show the world that Egypt means business and green business. So this year is a big year. It's a really challenging year, both in terms of economic exogenous shocks, but also the opportunity to showcase this country as I would like to see it showcased in the world as a leader in the green economy. So BEBA, my family firm, let me offer you two sentiments. Firstly, good luck, good tawfiq, for the trade mission, the 17th to 20th of May in London. I know it's going to be a fantastic mission, and I know much of the discussion will be around the green sectors that we all cherish, whether it be in green finance, whether it be in infrastructure, whether it be in renewable energy. It's going to be a really important mission, and you've got an extraordinary delegation and, of course, a senior ministerial delegation. But the other sentiment I offer you is congratulations for making it in a really tough world with a feeling of collaboration, partnership and enterprise, which I'm going to say is not paralleled. Even if some might claim there are competitors out there, I'm going to say you've got the prize as being an organization which means business and does business in an exemplary fashion. And as proof of that, you have a fantastic guest of honor tonight, in the form of the high-level champion, Dr. Mahmoud Mohieldin, who is, if I may say, Mahmoud, embarrassing you, something of a rock star in the political and economic firmament. And it's no surprise at all that BEBA have Mahmoud here as their speaker this evening, because that's the kind of guest that BEBA pushes for and gets. There. That's a lot of saying welcome and hello and have a good evening. I'm now going to hand things over to the chairman of BEBA, Dr. Khalid Nusseir. Come on up, Khalid.
In your lovely garden. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all to BEBA's annual Iftar. I know, like Gareth mentioned, BEBA family, we try to make this like annual tradition where we all get together. A bit of socializing, but also a bit of business. Given all the circumstances and all the threats and everything going on around us. Of course, we're here to discuss with Dr. Mahmoud Mohieldin the COP that's coming up. I will leave Dr. Maged Minshawi, my colleague, Vice Chairman of BEBA, to introduce Dr. Mahmoud. But I'd like also to extend our welcome to our dear distinguished guests with us tonight, His Excellency Engineer Tariq Al-Mullah, Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources, Dr. Mohammed Farid, the Chairman of the Egyptian Stock Exchange, His Excellency Engineer Yahya Zaki, Chairman of the Suez Canal Economic Zone, Dr. Mahmoud Mitini, President of Ain Shams University, Dr. Khalid Fahmi, former Minister of Environment, and Dr. Ashraf Al-Arabi, former Minister of Planning and International Cooperation, and Engineer Osama Kamal, former Minister of Petroleum. I hope you enjoy the discussion today, tonight, with Dr. Mahmoud, and we of course expect as many as possible to join us in the business mission to the UK. We've been planning for it. The whole team has been working hard for it. Last year we had to do a virtual mission. This year we have quite an extensive program, and we intend to accomplish a lot in preparation for COP and in also working on reinforcing our cooperation with the UK between Egyptian companies and UK companies. I'd like to thank and recognize also our sponsors for tonight, Mrs. Farida Khamis, Chairperson, and Professor Mohammed Lutfi, President and Vice Chancellor of the British University in Egypt, and Mr. Basil Al-Hini, the Chairman and Managing Director of Mr. Insurance Holding Company. Of course, our event partners, Bank Picard, CIB Egypt, Orascom Construction, QNB Al Ahli, and Tatweer Masr, who've always been supportive of our organization. I will leave the floor to Dr. Maged Minshawi to introduce Dr. Mahmoud Mohieldin.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Distinguished guests, it is my pleasure to introduce a dear friend and colleague a long time ago, Dr. Mahmoud Mohieldin, Egypt Climate Action Champion of COP27. Dr. Mohieldin is an economist, more than 30 years of experience in international finance and development. Currently, he serves as an executive director at the International Monetary Fund, IMF, representing 11 countries: Bahrain, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, the Maldives, Oman, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, and Yemen. In February 2022, Dr. Mohieldin was appointed by the Egyptian government as the Climate Action Champion at the 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP27. With aim at enhancing the communication between the Egyptian presidency of COP27 and businesses, private sectors, and the international funding institution. Working in climate change related fields. Since then, Dr. Mohieldin has been the United Nations Special Envoy on financing the 2030 Development Agenda. He's the former Minister of Investment in Egypt from 2004 till 2010. Dr. Mohieldin holds a PhD in economics from University of Warwick, United Kingdom, the Master in Economics, Social Policy Analysis from University of York, United Kingdom, and a diploma in Development Economics from University of Warwick, and in Economics from Cairo University in Egypt. Without further, also I would like to give the floor to Dr. Mohieldin for his speech. Thank you.
Good evening. It's great to be back here in this lovely historical garden and to be among friends. Ambassador Bailey, Mr. Nasser, Mr. Minshawi, Excellencies, Mr. Tarek al-Mullah, many good friends here, and I'm happy to be back, as I said. Not just to retrieve from memory what I cherish, but perhaps to have some ideas to be shared, because each time I came to this place, one would come up with some ideas, but definitely making new friends. One of the ideas, sitting next to my good colleague and friend, Dr. Mohammed Farid, at over breakfast many years back, there was a discussion about developing the fixed income market of Egypt, building the primary dealership system, and it came up during a breakfast with a couple of the experts from the financial institutions, accompanied by the Mayor of London, not the Mayor of London, but the Mayor of London, responsible for the capital market. There are two mayors of London. The one that I'm concerned with and always interested to follow is the one who leads the business and the financial sector. And he introduced me then to a very promising, became a friend after that, Mr. Paul Tucker, who became a deputy governor of the Bank of England, and who is the very same person who built the new system then of the trading floors for the government securities. And we got it just as a gift. So it's not always about money, as I'm always saying. It's about ideas and sharing knowledge. But money always welcome, especially in such interesting times that we are all facing. So, COP27, this means that you had COP26 before. Thank you so much, UK, for hosting it in Glasgow, as mentioned by the ambassador. The UK was very wise to postpone the hosting of COP26 for 1 year because of COVID-19. Now, guess what? COVID-19 is not over. We had another supply shock in the form of war in Europe, hostilities in Ukraine, with serious implications on food, prices, other commodity prices, including fuel, and we have financial challenges. For the veterans of financial crises like myself, you'll remember the 3 Fs of 2007-2008, food, fuel, and financial crisis. Now I have a 4th F for those who are coming from farming background like yourself. Fertilizers, very important, very essential for farming around the world. So, but we are not going to be postponing the COP. We are going to be pushing forward and pushing hard to fulfill the goals and targets that the world is expecting us from delivering. So in Glasgow, the good thing is that if you see the communique and the outcome documents, and you take it first from the level, at the global level, and I understand that while many of you are interested, but perhaps this could be the first time of many of you as well to know what's really happening on the climate agenda and how it's being organized. So there is a global level, the discussions about the commitments, the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions by each country. They need to be updated, verified. One thing new that we'll be having, I hope, and I'm happy that former Minister of Environment is here, that we're going to be attaching to the NDCs an investment plan. So we are going to projectize many of these commitments, not just in Egypt. We're learning from others. In this case, we're learning from India. But the global agenda is very much set for us, because if you see the Glasgow outcome documents, it's saying that by Sharm el-Sheikh, by November, we will be doing this, we'll be doing that. So all of these promises in the formal track are going to be pursued and updated. Now there is another tent. This is the formal tent that has His Excellency Minister Sameh Shukri, with the equivalent in the case of Egypt to the Honorable Minister Alok Sharma. And then he has his team. Of course, the members of the cabinet are members of the National Committee for the Climate Change, chaired by the Prime Minister. They meet regularly with His Excellency the President. So this is the formal discussions, formal negotiations. Now there is the other tent, the bigger one in terms of size. It's basically the rest of us, those who are not in government, but are active, from NGOs, from small community arrangements somewhere in some village, from a cooperative, to the big investment banks, to the international financial institutions, to local communities, municipalities, to regional organization. This is all the non-state actors, or the NSAs. So they were created based on the Paris Agreement in 2015. Marrakesh, in the summit that were held there, they had the arrangement, the mandate for the non-state actors, and they created that function for a champion. I find it a bit embarrassing for somebody who's trying, or at least pretending to be humble, to be called the champion. But anyways, this is what they call us. But you need to be really with some sort of achievement to justify having this kind of an impressive title. And as I was chatting with His Excellency the Ambassador, the equivalent in the Arabic language is Ra'id al-Munaf, which is not humble at all as well. You are saying something about you being an astronaut somewhere or something. Anyways, this is what we inherited from Paris Agreement and Marrakesh, but we need now to deliver. So what are we delivering on, and why we are concerned? And the targets at the beginning, they seemed very much scientific, developed by scientists, talking about the end of the century. But now we're saying, no, it's not really about the year 2050 or the year 2099. We started to see that. The qualified farmers in my village would tell you that we cannot cultivate some certain crops because of some changes that they cannot really explain. Those who are living in coastal areas are very much vulnerable to shocks and waves. What we see in floods around the world, what we see in deterioration of nature around the world and fires in forests is basically been there but have been intensified because of climate change. This is the science, and the latest report that came out from the UN system, the Intergovernmental Panel, the IPCC, is telling us that despite all of the claims, the many COPs that we had, we are drifting from the target. We're supposed to be reducing emissions by 45% by 2030. Now the trajectory is telling us that we are going to be exceeding and deviating by more than 16%. So instead of reducing the emissions by 45%, the deviation is around 60%. So how can we achieve what we're after? Is basically about doing better in one area of work, which is basically about mitigation. And it seems that many countries manage really to do well on this, thanks to technology, knowledge sharing, and huge investments. And you go to Za'afaran and you see lots of wind farms. You go to Bindan, you see solar energy. You talk to His Excellency the Minister here, he will talk to you about alternatives and many technological innovations, including the ones related to green hydrogen. I'm not really in this field, but I'm not really skipping a day without really hearing or listening to someone talking about green hydrogen as a great potential investment or an alternative to existent energy. And there is a great deal of competition here, from the Australians to the Europeans to the Americans, which is great. What is really alarming is the adaptation side. The world had neglected adaptation with a generous assumption that we are going to be doing well in mitigation. Now, don't worry, we are going to fix it, and now we are not fixing it. So investments required in water management, in agriculture, in protecting infrastructure, in protecting our shores and coastal areas, they do not have really adequate attention to them. And it's hard to invest in because of the fact that the business model is not really as simple and straightforward as the alternative energy or the renewable energy side. This means that we need to do more in this area and make the private sector and private finance going into areas that could be feasible, which are basically on the renewable side, and get the public finance from the public purse or from the MDBs into areas related to adaptation. Yes, there are solutions that are there with proper mix that we can really get them there in the adaptation side. So mitigation and adaptation are the formal terms that you'll find in the formal tent. My folks on the non-state actors, they call them race to resilience and race to zero. Race to zero if you are in the mitigation, and race to resilience if you are in the adaptation side. For the business community here, what I got from the update of the champions, and as you know, the system is one team, two champions. So the other champion is Nigel Topping, who's coming from the Glasgow and the COP26. Work together on a daily basis, and we have fantastic team supporting us. That team who's really running the show, the real champions, as I'm telling Nigel every day, is telling us that there isn't sufficient attention to the kind of work and coalitions and partnerships that came out from Glasgow, and there are need for partners in both coalitions on the race to resilience and the race to zero. Race to zero, we have some names. In Africa, there are few 124 participants in the race to zero, including a couple of names. One bank, CIB, is one of them. I don't know if HSBC is there, but if there, could be with the London-based hat rather than the Cairo-based hat. Anyway, so we need more of you participating with us in the coalition. There are opportunities for funding, opportunities for technical assistance, opportunities for knowledge sharing, and this is really a call for you to be with us on this. And I'm happy really. I'm not a diplomat, so from time to time I'll make some sort of politically incorrect comment here and there. Our British friends and hosts today are very good in setting standards and making arrangements and rules of engagement. So one of them is the coalition business. It's like FIFA. When you play football, you play them based on some old British or UK-based kind of ideas on how you play football. Doesn't matter who's winning at the end, but the rules have been originated there. I know it's not a very popular topic to talk about football, but I didn't really find something handy to think about. But the coalitions is like that. Rules of engagement. They need really to go and have some ideas on what to get best out of those who are in the coalition with you. Is it a business deal? Is it possible finance, possible investment, or knowledge and technical cooperation? The other one, which is really tough, is that race to resilience. And here, it's basically what we need to do more of. This is global. Regional, the focus is going to be Africa. And I'm happy that during the last 3 days, I had with me, and when I was with her, Vera Songwe, the Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa. She met many ministers during the last couple of days, and we still have a couple of meetings after this for the opportunities that Africa can really provide in a response to the Egyptian priority that we need to bring it from solutions, from summits to solutions, from claims and pledges into actions in the field. So every good idea needs really to be projectized. And here is basically we're trying to build as many projects as we can in Africa and beyond. And she's in the business of doing that with IFC, with the African Development Bank. She skipped this Iftar, unfortunately, because she had a prior engagement with the Exim Bank of Africa, but we'll be talking as well next week in Washington with EBRD and with the World Bank for opportunities. So for those of you who may have a project that's searching for funding, you may have heard, of course, about the announcement of the GFANs, the group of financial institutions committed to the net zero targets, and we mobilized $130 trillion of assets committed to investing in different areas of work in mitigation and primarily in mitigation. Of course, it's very hard to translate assets into flows. 130 trillion, we just need 1% of that and the world will be different. But we are trying to do our best to get a small fraction of this, and we'll hope to convince the teams organized by Bloomberg, by Mark Carney, the former Bank of England governor, is now the special envoy of the UN Secretary General, and Mary Shapiro, to do more. I'm keen to mention these names because these names, you need to search for them. I'm happy to make the introductions, because this is the way that you can really think on how can we knock on the proper doors to translate these assets into flows of funds. So from the global to the regional, Africa needs more in the adaptation, but needs as well serious attention to mitigation. So every opportunity when it comes to energy, when it comes to adaptation, there are huge opportunities there. Problem with Africa, that the perceived risk is much higher than the reality. Those who worked in Africa know better than there are very good feasible opportunities there. Then you come to the final level, which is the national level, what we're going to be doing better than what we are. So again, there's the government track, but there is the non-state actors. I see the biggest opportunity in Egypt in the decent life infrastructure development programs, and in many of the activities related to investments in human capital and investments in resilience. Yeah, for those of you who doubt climate change, this is 11th of April. We should be in a completely different weather condition. But this is a very unscientific comment about what's happening, but just until we reach that end of the speech, well, I'll just wrap it up fast. So we have here the opportunities in Egypt. What we should be really after having, inshallah, a successful COP will be remembered of. I think the summit could really help in getting everybody aware, not the Honorable Minister of Environment or those who are working on energy or those who are working in oil or those who are having opportunities in different deals, but basically to mainstream sustainability in by every possible way for those who are concerned, which is basically all of us. And there are actually two things that we need to be aware regardless your area of expertise: sustainability and digitalization. Smart and green, when you want really to make the more popular version of it. Then on the opportunities related to investments, it's Haya Karima and other projects, of course, but Haya Karima, I see it localizing the SDGs, having this holistic approach to development, pushing the opportunities for job creation, and at the same time trying to adhere to the rules of engagement when it comes to the Paris Agreement. So this is a great opportunity for everybody to be involved in, and there are opportunities with spending of more than 5% of the GDP of the country in less than 3 years, 5% every year for 3 years. This will create a great deal of opportunities. And this will answer the holistic approach, and this will answer the question of managing the transition fairly and properly and efficiently, which is something that many countries, including advanced economies, failed in. They didn't manage the transition well. That's why we had many crises, including the energy crisis before the Ukraine. Here, between and among friends, we cannot blame our mistakes at home for external problems that happen. They could be responsible, it could be a shock, but there are many things that we should really be making sure that they are not to be thrown onto external hangers if they are our responsibility. And one of the mistakes that we're committed is basically not managing the transition properly. So this is another good way of doing it. So it's a holistic approach in the case of COP27. It's an integrated approach. It's about managing the transition properly. When it comes to finance, countries around the world, including African countries, reach debt limits. So if you are in the finance business and if you are lending, you need to think investment, not more loans, not more borrowing. And if you are lending, this should be, with the jargon of billions to trillions, of thousands to hundreds of thousands, or thousands to millions. This should be the kind of money that could be leveraging more investments. But actually, it's not going to be accepted if there is an alternative from investment and you still go and borrow. This is going to be a mistake, and many countries, I'm emphasizing this, reach debt limits. With increasing interest rates around the world, to be close to 3% within less than 2 years, you cannot afford borrowing more. Each opportunity that you will have, I'm not just talking Egypt, can talk about Egypt definitely, but it will be a very big mistake. And here we are concerned about climate because it's affecting future generations. More loans in this kind of environment, even if they are going to be with some concessional elements, if they have an alternative from investment, they should be really the alternative to go to. And this is an honest advice, not just from me, from anyone who has been watching what's happening in the world. And we cannot blame it on COVID-19. And we cannot blame it on the Ukraine. The fourth wave of debt was there, recognized in 2019, well before COVID-19. Actually, there was a World Bank publication talking about the fourth wave. What are the previous waves? First wave, and each one of them, unfortunately, ended with a crisis. Latin America, 1970s, ended with a crisis. 1990s, emerging markets crisis ended with a crisis. Global financial crisis, that was the third wave, after heavy borrowing. Low interest rate, you go and borrow more, then you get stuck, then you see what's happening. Now we are in the fourth wave. We pray to God in this good holy month of Allah that this one will not end as bad as the 3 previous waves ended. So it's a call not to stop growing, not to stop investing, but basically invest by partnership. Give the private sector a chance. Give the domestic private sector a chance. Give the foreign investors a chance, not just for their money, but because they are smarter. I was in government for 15 years, so I have nothing really here to be ashamed of by being a public servant, but I can tell you at any point of time, you will feel that you are smart. You might be more powerful, but the ideas, the risk-taking, the solutions will come more from the private sector, and I see the golden opportunities at global level, regional level, and national level when we open up the business widely for those who can manage risk, do better, handle matters better than the bureaucrats who claim that they can solve all the problems in the world. So this is just something that I wanted to share before the mission going to London. Inshallah, if you're still going after what I said now, this would be a good opportunity to knock on the door strongly. I know that you are not going to be using door knock like your friends from the AmCham. You call it trade mission, and the proper English would tell you to say it there. Don't say door knock in London. And then you need to come back to us, please, with more trade, because I see trade is almost stagnant during the last 3 years. It's decent, it's sizable between the UK and Egypt, but you need to do more. Investment, last time I checked, the UK considered Egypt as number 3 in Africa, but Egypt is more than qualified to be number 1 in attracting investment. The opportunities at all levels, and all sectors are there, but you need really to do more to promote the opportunities. Having said that, thank you so much and good luck, and many thanks to you all.
Thank you, Dr. Mahmoud, for the insightful presentation, both on COP and on the general affairs of the world. I'm sure there are a lot of questions from the floor. You've touched on so many things and so many thoughts on many people's minds, but we will welcome questions from the floor to Dr. Mahmoud.
Yeah, questions from the floor and answers from the floor as well would be better.
I mean, we've collected some of the questions actually, and all or most are about how can Egyptian companies, many of whom have actually championed efforts and participated in efforts, how can they support or be part of the COP preparation?
For the British companies which participated in COP26, how can we do the same for COP27?
No, actually, Egyptian companies that have actually already gone ahead and championed in mitigation and have done a lot of efforts in that respect.
Right. So let me go back to those 2 tracks. So the first track is the one related to dealing with deals in partnership with the government, with the public sector, with arrangements, especially in this area. You need really to have very strong relations and good communication with the 2 relevant ministries to that. And one of them, of course, His Excellency the Minister is here, and that could be one of the fastest areas here in areas related to phasing out from the hydrocarbon sector, seeking the alternatives, investing in hydrogen. And then you have this kind of partnership between the 2 ministries responsible for energy, including, of course, here the Ministry of Electricity, when you are investing in the renewables, in solar and wind and beyond. So here, the recognition of the opportunities through those two ministries and the investment authority could help as well if you are still new in the game. But dealing with those two ministries, then you have the other thing. How are you going to finance this? We have, through the champions, a team working on investment and greening the investment opportunities, including issuance of green bonds if you need that. But I just said that you need not to go into borrowing unless necessary, and that could be part of a package of finance and investment. So you need to use and navigate between those two tents carefully. What I like to see here is basically trying to identify some of the projects that have been already announced. If you want really to use and capitalize on the opportunities for announcement in November, you need really to see some of those opportunities that have been already announced as good, well-prepared opportunities. You need to explore further. We're happy to help from our side, but this could be more on the global and regional side. You get their international side, this more in the ministries and the government. Happy to have some specific discussion on this if you have something.
There are a few companies actually that spearheaded some very successful efforts and examples that could be a good showcase to show on the COP27.
If it is about scaling up solar opportunities, yes, we are familiar with that. Wind opportunities, we're talking with His Excellency, the Ambassador, before that about the technology in the UK. That could really be helpful as well. But there are other opportunities as well I'm happy to discuss.
Dr. Mahmoud, thank you very much for your speech. I have a number of questions too. Some of them are similar. I will try to. Will there be events prior to COP27 for businessmen and private sector to participate? And if at all, when there will be the agenda available for COP27?
Right. Again, the government side is having its own agenda, and there will be days, thematic days, that are going to be shared very shortly in a few days. On our side, we are going to be having as well a number of roundtables. Some of them will be focused on Africa, some of them are going to be Africa and beyond. They are going to be based on different themes, mirroring what you are going to be seeing in Sharm el-Sheikh. So, and I just agreed with His Excellency, the Minister of Finance, because this is just an example. There is a finance day, and that finance day is going to be in September, and there is going to be another big event during the summit days in November. But from now until September, we are going to be having on bi-weekly basis roundtables between ministers of finance from Africa and other continents and the investment banking community. So that will be as well shared on our website, on the Champions website. So here there will be the portal, which is going to be similar to what the UK did. They had a fantastic portal, COP26. There will be a COP27 portal, and then with that you'll see a link to the portal coming from us and the non-state actors with the business opportunities in those two particular tracks on the Race to Zero and the Race to Resilience, identifying the calendar of events and who will be there and how to register and all of that. All of them will be free of charge. So
until when free of charge?
Until we finish this summit. After the summit, we'll charge you heavily.
Okay. What can BEBA do to raise necessary awareness for private sector for contribution to COP27 and climate?
Right. Okay. So what I did with Vera Songwe yesterday and today, we had meetings with the aggregators, with the Federation of Egyptian Industry, with the chambers of commerce, with the chairman of the chambers of commerce, and the chairman of the banks union. So Mr. Tribi and Mr. Swedi and Mr. Al-Arabi. We had lengthy discussion with them just today about the matters related. First, you need to know the opportunities. You need to know not just the risk, because climate change was almost seen, well, this group of scientists, there are heads of state coming, they are going to be issuing some agreements, going to have some nice pictures and leave. It's not the case anymore. It's basically about opportunities for business, and if the carrots is not enough, I'm telling you what's coming your way. What's coming your way are tough regulations on the financial sector, starting with the financial sector. Like if you are in the banking sector, you know the rules when it comes to capital requirement, the Basel requirements, the auditing principles, and all of that. But with them, there will be some new rules related to climate. There is the task force on climate change that you need to disclose in what line of business you are lending, the footprint, the emissions, and whether your client is compliant or not. So the commanding heights are basically the banks and the banking sector. The regulations will be coming their way. From the central bank, every central bank, not just in this country, all central banks around the world are going to be having these kind of rules. In the non-bank financial sector, Mohammed Farid and his friends, they know very well what's coming their way as well in all areas related to disclosure from their international organizations and the standard setters. So we can really do the following. We say, well, those guys are just joking. And we saw, because of the catastrophe in Ukraine, some people are even now fueling their energy by coal. So there is no big deal. Well, I would say that what is happening in Ukraine, we pray it's going to be ending fast, and there's going to be just a disruption, and people will resume the business of saving the world from this kind of human-made disaster affecting climate change. So 3 things here. Carrots, opportunities for investment that you mentioned. Sticks are going to be coming from compliance and regulations and disclosure requirements that are going to be by the banking sector and by the listing rules. And you don't need to call your company green just to be compliant. Anyone should be compliant by these new rules. There is a great deal, if you read the Financial Times 4 weeks ago, there was a very important article on greenwashing. By more than $2.3 trillion managed by more than 1,900 fund managers, and many of them are just claiming that they are doing the right thing, but there is a great deal of greenwashing. This means that they are not really applying standards, or the rating agencies, many of them are doing their best now to understand this industry better, and they are acquiring some consultancy firms, but the standards are not the same. So 10 days ago, the Secretary General of the UN formed that committee to verify the code, the standard, the concepts, and the compliance and the procedures related to that. And they are going to be issued these rules by the end of this year. What we are trying to do is to have some sort of early draft to share it with you. So here, the carrots, if you want the benefits, and then the sticks coming from the regulators. And what is the third? Is basically the non-price competition. If you are in the banking sector and another bank charging the same but claiming that they are doing better than you for the environment and climate. So those are the three areas. And what will be the area of discipline here is basically the general public, when they know that you are not doing the right thing. So my daughter's generation and her folks, you see them marching, and there will be actually, I didn't see a question on that, there will be opportunity, like there was an opportunity in Glasgow for those who demonstrate to save the planet. There will be an opportunity for the activists, including the young activists, to do the same in Sharm el-Sheikh. So anything that happened in Glasgow will be matched in Sharm el-Sheikh, hopefully with some good competition and weather. I think we can win that one easily. Thank you. All right.
Okay. I have a question from Randa, the climate expert at the British Embassy. For 3 questions, in fact. Well, what could
We have suhoor here as well.
What could the high-level champion and the marketing partnership do to increase participation and access to relevant experts and resources?
Yeah, okay.
Second question, what originally...
So who's going to do what? What
could the high-level champion and the Marrakesh partnership,
the Marrakesh partnership
do to increase
awareness
and parties and relevant expert and resources?
Okay, I think I can answer this one. Okay.
Second question, what originally inspired your interest, Dr. Mahmoud, in sustainability?
Yeah. So what person inspired me? Well, I can't answer the first question. The second question, my daughter can answer. So it's not because easy. It's a tough question. She's smarter than me. She's the engineer in the place. But I'll try to answer this. But don't tell her about my answer. And the third?
And the third, your vision to bridge the gap to finance.
Okay. Well, I leave the third question for you to answer because I can't just tell you ideas about bridging finance gaps. But the first one, I think I tackled that partly in my earlier presentation. So you will be familiar more about what this Marrakesh partnership is doing. But you need to be involved. Please apply. Please be a member of a relevant coalition based in your interest, your background, if you are profit-making, profit-seeking, if you are an academic organization, NGO. So that familiarity will be just by Googling now the climate champions and the Marrakesh partnership and register your name, and we'll be happy. I'm having colleagues here from the private office of the champions to help as well in the introduction. But the idea there is basically how to coordinate the different themes of work and to seek this kind of complementarity. What you are working in your community of practice, if you are a banker, you know the bankers in town, you know the bankers in the region, you know the bankers around. But basically this kind of work requires more understanding of different players, different stakeholders in different themes. So this kind of interdisciplinary, borrowing that from the academia approach, it's our responsibility to do this kind of matchmaking. So give us this opportunity and we will be of help to you. If you have the interest, if you have the idea, we can develop it with you. On this issue on why I got myself into this kind of an issue, or perhaps trouble, well, I think it came first from the finance. Just to be honest, it's finance and investment. And then they developed the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, and they looked for somebody to finance the whole thing. The goals are just dreams, aspirational, that we want a world with zero extreme poverty. We want a world with more equality than it is today. We want a world with more gender opportunities than it is today. But how to finance this? They didn't think about it during the MDGs time. So they called some of us, including me from the World Bank, to help financing these goals. One of these goals, the SDGs, is SDG 13, the one on climate. So I got myself into that business because I found what I called at some stage the new religion. And I told that to Ambassador, before this meeting or gathering with you, that sustainability is much broader than climate. It means the whole integrated approach to life, livelihood, the people, the planet, and it's not just about climate change. Climate change is part of it. Biodiversity, you added to that, is not part of climate change. This is another thing. So in order to get them all solved, you need really to have this holistic approach. So I came into this field from that kind of background, sustainable development and the holistic approach. And then they say, well, you have been saying that, come and help help us more in the climate agenda. So I developed a couple of ideas related to climate investment in the mitigation field. And then now we are struggling with the adaptation. That's why we are seeking some partnerships in there. So this is basically my background. And of course, when I said my daughter, yes, she challenged me a couple of times. How dare I getting myself into these technical scientific matters, because she dropped economics. She said that's it's not good in providing solutions, it's good in diagnosis, but engineers can do the solutions better. So that's why I'm in this kind of household competition between her and me, and you are paying the price for that.
Thank you, Dr. Mahmoud. Now I have a question a little bit not related to COP27. Is your last book. The last book which Dr. Mahmoud have launched in March 22 was dealing in 9 chapters about the sustainable development and the relation in progress and the infrastructure and the COVID and the pandemic and everything. But unfortunately at that time there were no Russia-Ukraine conflict. So if at all there were at that time while you were doing your book, you will add an additional chapter for...
No, it was there already. Not as a fortune teller, but I said the title of the book is Towards Progress or On Progress, Disruptives and Pathways. So the disruptives could be anything, like this one. The disruptives, and as you can see, they are gone. So if you are just going to spend too much time chasing those disruptors, you'll be wasting everybody's time. So I put a variety of disruptions and how we deal with them. One of them was the health shock of COVID, but then we had challenges related to climate change. We had the issues related to demographic challenges. This is a major disruptive if you are not going to be taking care of it from the very beginning. If you ignore it, it will be back haunting you. There are other forms of disruptives, and including, of course, the tough geopolitics that we're living in. So what I'm saying here, if you are really determined towards improvement and progress, you will be getting all of these shocks in your pathway towards development. And I got examples from the Eastern Hemisphere, from Lee Kuan Yew, and from a fantastic book actually that was very much influential in my thinking on development. When you talk Singapore, you all think of Lee Kuan Yew. But actually there is someone who's not less important than Lee Kuan Yew, was Dr. Swee, who put a book on the practice of growth. How can you grow and develop from the state that they were in? They were really disrupted from the very beginning by being rejected from the Malaysian Union. Then they got disrupted because of the fact that they have nothing, almost nothing, no natural resources, but they invested in the right thing. So the whole thing basically in that book is telling you the following. These are varieties of disruptions. I went through them, and then the key for them is to deal with them through 3 things. Investment in human capital, in health, in education, and early childhood, investment in infrastructure, including digital infrastructure, and investment in resilience. Investment in resilience that's related to sustainability and climate change. You see the history of civilizations, why they got civilized, not just the fortune of land and the nice weather, but it's basically about taking the human capital seriously. This is the kind of development that you see in the first industrial revolution in England, that originated in England. Then you get all of these investments in human capital that resulted in advances in knowledge and technology with the second industrial revolution. This is not just because of infrastructure, it's because of people thinking and sharing their knowledge, the power of ideas. And then the investment in resilience, resilience is beyond climate change. Yes, you need to have some resilience against shocks from weather, but the society itself needs to be resilient. And the ability to bounce back after a shock. And societies are different, but you can really invest in the ability to deal with shocks. And what we see around us, with this great uncertainty around us, great disruptions. Unfortunately, the war in Ukraine is not the final one that we'll be seeing in our generation. This is the kind of expectations, because the current world order is seeing its last days, and there are people thinking about, definitely we don't have a new world order, but the world order that we inherited after the Second World War and the Cold War had exhausted its means to sustain the world that we're living in. There are new players, regional and global, and you are going to be seeing more disruptions coming from tensions, from more geopolitical tensions, in addition to what we saw in the form of a health shock like COVID, in a form of deterioration in health, in life conditions because of macroeconomic shocks like the one that we're seeing. So what you need to do, again, I see no other solution, and this could be a challenge. Invest in human capital, invest in your infrastructure to support the system, but invest in the resilience of society at large. So this is the book, and you don't need to buy the book. I just summarized it to you in 5 minutes, or less.
يعني based on what you just mentioned, Dr. Mahmoud, so where do you see this geopolitical tension taking the whole globe, and ultimately also affecting sustainability?
Right. In the short term, there are many bad things happening. You will be getting next week reports from the IFIs, World Bank, IMF, other institutions, telling us that growth is lower than expected 6 months ago. Inflation is going to be higher than expected 6 months ago. What we are going to be seeing is some major reluctance to invest because of perceived risk. So this is the kind, and the pandemic is not over. And you'll see some desperate act by people trying, under the pressure of these huge fuel prices increase, to go back. It's good that those who are exporting natural gas, and I think our Minister of Petroleum, with his innovative thinking, is very happy that his project in the East Mediterranean Forum, gas forum, is proven not just useful, but feasible, and an outcome of strategic thinking. But just 6 months ago, some European countries were not considering natural gas as one of the sources of clean energy. Now it is, of course, very clean energy, along with nuclear. And given the alternative is coal. So that's this is the world that we're living in. Until they invest heavier and better in the renewables and diversify their sources of energy. This is what you are seeing in the short term. In the midterm is basically, when it comes to energy, I'm betting on more investments in alternatives and more diversification, or diversifying of sources of energy, because the heavy dependence on 1 or 2 countries in neighborhoods proven wrong. So we'll be seeing some sort of major shifts on that with reasonable costs. It's not really true that some people would say beyond any cost. No, there are budget constraints, so it should be really feasible within the cost. And the technology is giving us the alternative. The experts in renewable energy will tell me that the solar solutions is 95% less costly than what they were 9 years ago. This is technology with investment, with scaling up of the opportunities, and some tough competition between Europe, the US, and China. What I like to see is not just, as we are witnessing, that the center of economic gravity is shifting toward the east of the world. It's a legitimate question for those who are living, not just the nation, those who are living and making living out of this region, this country. Where are we going to be? We have seen this kind of center of economic gravity moving, but will it be a better world for us or not? Will it be a better world for our children or not? Will it? Depends on the three investments that you are doing. Nobody is going to be giving you gifts anymore. You invest in your knowledge, you invest in your ability to compete, you invest in your resilience of the society. This is what makes Singapore Singapore. This is what made China in less than 40 years China today. This is what made the UK in the early years of transformation what it is today. A very useful book on that. I have the courage to suggest a book about the UK and how it became a strong power. A book on the Victorians and how we managed to contribute not just to investments, but in knowledge and education to make this kind of transformation. It's a team kind of work, not just one. It's not just Lee Kuan Yew, it's a team with Lee Kuan Yew. It's not the time of Victoria alone, one or two persons there, but have been really generation of those who have been responsible for the transformation. And this is basically what I like, what I call the aggregators, like you. It's not just one person. You can really be doing great on your own. You can just do the business. But there is a benefit of community building and not to have matters isolated from the rest of what's happening around you.
How much time we still have?
Well, the ambassador wants to sleep at some stage.
At least I am having three final questions.
Okay, go
Quick
ahead.
one.
And I have one as well.
Dr. Amr Sada from the British University in Egypt. You mentioned about Hayat Karima in your speech.
Yes.
The British University in Egypt established its own Hayat Karima group of young academics. How do you view the role of Hayat Karima and universities in climate change and the road to COP27?
Right. So, yeah.
Okay.
I remember.
From Ghada USA AID projects, what about the role of micro, small and medium enterprises, as well as innovation startup to support the race to resilience?
Excellent.
How can the smaller private sector participate, but also be ready for adaptation?
Very good.
How do you see the role of startup in the case of in the race to zero and the race to resilience, and how can we work together in that aspect? Dr. Amir Gerges, founder of Egypt Carbon Bank.
3+1. Or do you want to end with this?
No, it's another question regarding what are Egypt's objectives and priorities for COP27, and how can the private sector contribute to these goals?
All right. So that question, I need to go and stand up again as I started. That way, yeah, I'm happy to repeat more specifically on the project side of that. But the first question on Hayat Karima, the Decent Life project, I'm not exaggerating because I'm coming from rural Egypt, and if you tell me that one component of Decent Life, which is extending sewage network to villages, not towns, is going to be fulfilled in any project, and you call it whatever you like, this is a marvelous project that we need to be behind it, because we have never had it actually even considered to be one of the projects. I was in government for many years. I followed government since 1990, and I didn't really see anybody claiming that at any stage we are going to be extending sewage network. Well, this project is not just about sewage network. When we talk about Hayat Karima, it cannot really happen without decent sewage network and good water management system before that. But it's about schooling, it's about health units, it's about opportunities for women to work. And there is one matter here, because when you get unemployment rates, and it's coming from university, we need to know something about the figures behind the numbers here. Unemployment rate had either flat or had been reduced, but the participation rate of women had declined. So this is, and why the participation rate had declined? Because the woman didn't really find a good opportunity to think even of applying for a job. So that Hayat Karima project is bringing job opportunities, because it's not just about the urban development and the extending the energy and the natural gas to every village, and improving the supplies of water and all of that. That's all that's happening. But about investing in opportunities for work in district, and they took this district approach, which is the right thing. For each district, roughly between 200,000 to 700,000, you will find a decent district for job opportunities. So during the life of the project is going to support some of the poorest in this country, and actually the majority of the poorest in this country. But they are going to be supported as well by middle income class, who are the builders, the manufacturers, the investors. So it's really the project, the one that could really bring hope of major transformation. So for your university then, this is an open lab for partnership, for monitoring, for evaluation, for training. And there are lots of good partnerships that are being built around Haya Karima, including from the university, not just the big ones represented here by Dr. Miteni, but from the regional universities as well, for the professors and for the teachers, for the professors and for the students. Small and medium enterprises. Well, in a good day, they could be good, unless you are not really allowing them to grow. The idea, and here it's another lesson from India, they discovered that the incentive structure for SMEs, or for the SME to be SME forever. I'm small today, I'm small tomorrow. If you check on me, in 30 years I'll be small. Why? Because the banking sector is going to be generous to me, giving me all of these subsidized loans. Access to technical assistance from different ministries, because I'm small. Support in export and marketing, they will give you that. Once you cross the threshold, no, you are not small anymore. We don't know you. So they found that the Indians are very good in this applied research. They found that these kind of incentives contributed to dwarfing some of these projects that had a potential to grow and to be bigger in size and bigger in profits. So it's good to, and this is linked to the third question about the startup. Small is great, micro is fine, it's fine. Actually, there is a book called Small is Beautiful by Schumacher, not the very famous car racer, but Professor Schumacher talking about it's not the big industry, it's the small one. And then somebody, of course, economics is about the big. Somebody, no, it's big is beautiful. I would say in a country like us, please invest small, big, but just compete and compete hard. I like more what, talking about a question coming from university, from Professor Ricardo Hausman of Harvard University. He said, don't call it small or medium, it's basically a young enterprise. This means that it is young today. There is nothing called young forever unless you are in cosmetics. But in this area, you can talk really about young today, becoming bigger tomorrow. And this is basically how we need really to invest in these companies with potential, not to dwarf them forever. And then the role of the startups, not just the startups, all of the companies, including startups, especially the ones that had technology solutions, are more than welcome in our platforms for work. So this is another call for you to partner with us. Soha is here as well, and we can make the introduction to those who know more about this. Our job is just bridge builders and connectors. There are people who just do this kind of work and connect you with the networks. And you had your question, I answered it first. Yeah, I dealt with this, or anything is missing? Your question.
It's to the gentleman or lady on the floor who had sent this question.
Yeah, is there any other question that I didn't answer fully or try to escape from? You can stay with us here, it's nice where I am.
It's getting cold, and
yeah,
the weather definitely, I don't know if you were here last week, it was like 42.
Yeah,
so
I heard. So I heard.
So definitely climate change is taking its toll.
Yeah, so I'd just like again to thank you.
Thank you very much,
And
Dr.
to thank
Mahmoud.
His Excellency the Ambassador for his hospitality as well. And if I want to end it by anything, invest, invest, and invest. This is our hope in this country and for the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahmoud.
Yeah,